software validation is the activity which comes after development, isn't it? First, let us see what is software validation. Screen. Look at the basic definition of V&V. V&V stands for verification and validation. Verification and validation is intended to show that a system conforms to its specification and meets the requirements of the system customer. That means always whenever you do any process activity, we have to keep in mind what we are intended to show to the customer, and whatever we are developing that conforms to the requirements of the customer. So that is what very important. And verification and validation involves checking and review processes and system testing. Look at the second point. It involves checking and review processes. See, it can be any process. So you should not imagine that verification and validation should be done only after finishing development. That means it is not applicable only for the source code. It is also applicable for the SRS document. It is also applicable for the design document, and similarly the source code. That means, see, once the business analyst gets the information from the client about what are his requirements, and once that document preparation is done, that has to be verified for its consistency and its completeness. So therefore, in case of SRS also, this verification and validation is coming into the picture. Then after that, when you step into design, system design, there also, after designing all the diagrams, then you need to cross check whether the system design is inconsistent with software system requirements or not. So whatever the requirements that you have to document, same thing has to be implemented as a design. So there also we do verification and validation. Similarly, in the source code. In the source code, what we do, we'll compare our source code with the design as well as with the requirements document. Say there will be something called as a matrix. Say one side you put, in the x-axis you put the requirements, that means the requirement ID. In the right, in the y-axis you put the name of the functionality what you have developed. Then you'll, so say for example, requirement ID 1 is implemented, then put tick mark. Okay, then requirement 2 is implemented as some functionality, then put tick mark. Like that you will trace everything. That is called as traceability matrix. A software test engineer will prepare something called as a traceability matrix, using which he will cross check whether all the requirements are completely implemented or not. System testing involves executing the system with the test cases that are derived from the specification, means from the SRS document of the real data to be processed by the system. Testing is the most commonly used verification and validation activity. So therefore, that is what we say testing, that is one of the commonly used activity in verification and validation. Then you may be thinking, what other things can be done as part of verification and validation? See, have you heard about code review? Friends, any idea what is code review? So there are two techniques in code review. One is static review and another one is dynamic review. Static review can be done by a developer who has written the code. That means you just cross check, so whether the code is optimized, whether it contains any bugs, whether it can be further optimized or not. Okay, that becomes static review. To do the same thing by using some software tool, there are some of the tools available using which you can do code review. That is called dynamic review. That is also part of verification and validation only. Then you can do code analysis by using some of the tools. So code analysis, code review, or then software testing. These are some of the activities which are commonly we do as part of verification and validation activity. Now, stages of testing. Component testing. See, component testing means it's a smallest individual component. Say, for example, you are implementing one user-defined function. You are defining some user-defined function to do some meaningful task. You test that function separately by adding from executable libraries so that you can execute that function and pass actual input and see what is the expected output and what is the desired output. If both are matching, so then that component is working fine. So that such a testing is called as component testing. We also call it as unit testing. Then system testing. When multiple individual components are put together, it becomes one subsystem. And if you put together multiple subsystems, it becomes a complete system. That is called system testing. That means when you integrate all the components within the system, then it becomes a complete software. Then you have to test that complete software by using test cases. That is called system testing. When the system testing is successful, then just before delivering software to the customer, sometimes he will be giving certain test cases that you have to execute and check the results that it is also correct. That is called acceptance testing. So that means, this will be monitored by the client representative. Acceptance testing will be monitored by the client representative. That is why it is called as acceptance testing. Just before accepting the software from the software contractor, they do this acceptance testing. If the acceptance testing results are satisfactory, then only the final software will be delivered to the client. So these are the stages of testing: component testing, system testing, and acceptance testing. Say, for example, here, so you have tested all the individual components, then system testing is done. Then during acceptance testing, say for example, one of the user interface is not designed as per the suggestions given by the client, then that will be sent for redesign. So that will go to the developer, he will redesign, then you check that component. That is component testing. Then you integrate that component with the complete system. Then you do once again system testing, then once again send it back for acceptance testing. So like this, if anything is rejected during acceptance testing, that has to be redesigned again, and you have to perform component testing, system testing, then once again it has to come to acceptance testing. So this is called as stages of testing. So you may get a question like, explain stages of testing in detail with the help of a neat diagram. This is a simple diagram that you need to draw, and you need to explain what is component testing, system testing, and acceptance testing. Okay, now whatever I told, so that's okay, its description is being given here. Component testing: individual components are tested independently. Components may be functions or objects or interfaces, or any individual. See, individual component means it can be, say, user-defined header file, that is one component, or user-defined function, that is one component, or interface file, that is one component. So like that, you have to check all individual components within the system. Then individual components, if you bring it together and integrate them, that becomes a complete software. Then you have to test some complete system as a whole using test cases, system level test cases. So in between component testing and system testing, there is one more thing called as integration testing. So that's why I told, say system means set of subsystems, one subsystem means set of modules, then one module means set of functionalities, and to implement one functionality you may have to write one or more programs. So that's how we need to view the software. Then customer testing. Customer testing is nothing but acceptance testing. Testing with customer data to check that the system meets the customer's needs. And this testing will be monitored by the client representative. He will give you what input should be given to the system and how to test. Under his guidance, he will be testing, and he will review the results of the testing. Then he will decide whether to accept the software or to reject it. So that is called customer testing. Then students, this is very, very important. This is the interview question, which is called as the V model. Testing phases in a plan-driven software process. See, there are drawbacks in waterfall model. See, if you look at here, the headings: requirement specification, system design, detailed design, then module and unit code testing, subsystem testing, system testing, acceptance and service. Actually, so we have divided the phases of SDLC, that is waterfall model, into subcategories. Then we have designed a methodology so that within a project team there will be so many teams. Say for example, there will be a team which is specialized in documenting the requirements. At the same time, there will be a team which is specialized in designing the system design. Then developers, similarly the operations team, who are responsible for deploying the system and testing it and giving the feedback, like that, and the software testing team. So in testing team, there will be two domains: quality assurance and testing. So before sending it for QA, you cannot send it for deployment. Okay, QA is different and testing is different, but both looks similar. See, in QA, what happens? In quality assurance, they will be having something called as the metrics. They will check the application against the metrics, and if they get satisfactory results, then that will be accepted. That will be sent for further deployment. Otherwise, once again, it will be sent back to the developers to relook the code and to optimize it or to troubleshoot the bugs. Then once again, it will come for testing. From there, QA, then for deployment, like that. See here, in case of waterfall model, the very big drawback is that, see, until you finish the code, until you finish writing the source code, the software testing team, they will be simply sitting. Now in case of V model, what we can do, as soon as the system requirement specification or the requirement specification is done, the testers can start designing acceptance test cases. So what is this acceptance test cases? As a software, whether this can be accepted or not. See here, you have all the requirements. Okay, what is to be implemented? By looking at what is to be implemented, you design the test data about how to check the functionality. Then, see, for that the basis is requirement specification and system specification. See, system specification means the requirement specification tells only the requirements of the client, whereas the system specification tells so many things, including what kind of software, hardware requirements you will be using, then what are the limitations, restrictions, everything. By knowing that, it becomes easy for the tester to design acceptance test cases. Even the client can also design this. Sometimes what happens, acceptance test cases will be designed by the testers, but it will be reviewed by the client representative. And there are also possibilities where the client himself can design the acceptance test cases and he can give it for testing. Then parallelly, so during system design, system integration test plan can be designed. So when the system test plan is ready, based upon that, the testers can design system integration test cases. That means they can take a call on which component should be integrated with which other component. So the overall idea is that, see here, parallelly everyone is engaged within the project. See, people who are working on requirements are also working parallelly, and design engineers are working parallelly, and here system integration testers are parallelly working, and they are preparing their test cases, and they need not wait until you finish off coding work. Then similarly, see, in system design, as I told, there is two phases. One is abstract design and another one is detailed design. Example for abstract design is architecture design and level 0 DFD. or level 1 DFD. So detailed design means to come up with flow charts and to come up with data flow diagrams, sequence diagrams, and so on, use case diagrams. That becomes detailed design. So when you have system design and detailed design document, you can come up with subsystem integration test plan. Using that, so subsystem integration testing can be test cases can be designed. See, subsystem integration means within, say for example, within one subsystem, how many modules are there? So in what sequence we need to integrate, and what is the dependency that exists between one module and another module. So by knowing that data, you can do subsystem integration. Then after detailed design, you can do module and unit test code. So this is called as a V model. So V model is nothing but the modified waterfall model. The waterfall model can be modified to become V model. So if you look at this shape, it will take the shape of V, hence it called as V model. See, actually this V stands for verification and validation, and it takes the shape of V. You can see here, if you invert it, it will look like V, and it's called as V model. V stands for verification and validation. And this is an interview question also. So they'll ask, what is the difference between V model and waterfall model? So the biggest difference is that in case of waterfall model, until you finish off the coding part, testers will be simply sitting idle. So then only they'll start working. But here in case of V model, just by having the SRS document, they can start with acceptance test plan, and they can start devising the test cases. Then after system specification and system design, they can start system integration test plan. So based upon the integration test plan, they can devise system integration test cases. Then after finishing detailed design, they can start with subsystem integration test plan, and also they can devise the test cases for that. So in this way, using this model is more advantageous compared to using waterfall model. See, now no one uses waterfall model, so they use either iterative model or V model. Okay, so look at here, requirement specifications, system specification, next step, then system design. After that, in detail design, which includes ER diagrams, data flow diagrams, sequence diagrams, and so on. After that, start coding, then perform testing individual components, which is called as unit testing, then send it for testing, then subsystem integration, then system integration, then acceptance test. Once this is done completely, then you can deliver the software to the customer. That is called service. Next is software evolution. Students, anything you want to ask about V model?
I have a question, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, in case the company doesn't fulfill all the requirements, can the client change company, sir? Like, I don't want your company, I'll go to another company to get the software.
No, it is not like that. See, there is something called as MOU and SLA. SLA means service level agreement. Okay, they will give timestamp to the company. So within this time you are supposed to develop. Okay, and buffer time will be, let's say, sometimes 1 month and sometimes 15 days. So some grace period they may give. Then at the same time, they'll be quoting the budget. See, they will tell, so within this budget you have to develop, and this is the timestamp, and this is the grace period. And at the same time, service level agreement also tells that, so to what extent the system will meet the requirements. So system will meet the requirements. Say for example, so see, the task of the software company is not just deliver the software. After that, they have to give service, isn't it? So that is also part of service level agreement. Okay, so even if they discard the project also, for how many months, okay, so they have worked for that much, they have to pay. Say for example, so the duration of the project is 1 year. So after 6 months, you are telling me, okay, so they may reject. It cannot be rejected like that. They have to wait for complete 12 months, then they can reject. If at all they are rejecting, they have to pay the money, because 12 months people have worked. Okay, they have to pay the money. Then, so in case if it is rejected, so say for example 10 or 12% of the amount may be deducted based upon the negotiations what they'll be doing before signing for the MOU. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So any other questions? The customer cannot reject. I'll tell you what is another reason why the customer cannot reject. See, once the company finishes designing the SRS document, they'll show you to the customer. You can verify once, you see whether the requirements document is complete or not, whether we have documented 100% requirements or not. Okay, once he tells, okay, everything is documented, then only they will start designing. Then after the system design, they'll show that design document to the client representative. Then he has to verify the document, design document, so that whatever the requirements that are documented, same thing is been converted into system design. He will agree. Once he agrees, then only coding will be started. That means in each and every phase, they are taking suitable input and approval from the client representative. That is the reason why, simply just like that, they cannot ignore. See, instead of ignoring, he may request, see, kindly implement it in some other way so that it will be easy for us to access. So such requirements he can place, but he cannot reject, because after taking the approval in each of the stages, they have moved forward. So that is the reason why the client cannot reject the software just like that. It is very difficult. It is not so easy to reject the software, because in each and every phase he has given the approval. Then how we can reject the software? He has approved the requirements, he has approved the design, he has approved everything. Then only thing is coding. So if anything happens with coding, then he can tell, so you re-implement it. That will be done. That is not a big issue. Okay, say for example, if the company doesn't have the suitable resources, they may give it for outsourcing. Okay, for which the customer need not bother. The customer need not bother whether that company itself is doing or they are outsourcing it to some other company, but the work will be done. Then he has to check in the acceptance test whether whatever requirements have given is being implemented or not. That he will cross check during the acceptance test. If the results of acceptance test are satisfactory, then there is no chance wherein the customer can say, I don't want this software. That is the final check. Acceptance test is the final check. See, even before acceptance test, two types of testing will be done. That is alpha testing and beta testing. Alpha testing will be done by the developers. Then beta testing will be done by the, most of the times that will be outsourced to some other company to perform beta testing, or it will be outsourced to a specialized testing team within the same company. That means, say you have written the program, if I am testing your code, I can detect more errors. So what happens in case if you have developed the program and if you are only testing the application, so your testing process may not be that much fruitful, because it becomes very difficult for you to detect your own errors. So what happens if you do the coding and if I am doing the testing, I can detect more errors. With that strategy, the testing will be done. Shall we go ahead? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Next is software evolution.
Yes, sir.
See, software evolution comes into the picture only after delivering the software to the customer. After acceptance testing, the software will be delivered to the customer. and that will be deployed at client place. If it is an web application, it will be hosted on web, and the maintenance task will be taken care by the software company. And if it is an India like standalone application, the company representative will go and he will install it in the client place and he will come back. Then after using for certain period, so the client may identify some of the bugs which have to be rectified by the development team. Okay, then the software company has to rectify the bugs. So that is one aspect. And another aspect is, if they come up with new requirements, if the company feels, the client company feels we need few more functionality to be added, then they will raise that request. Once again, that will be implemented and once again tested and delivered to the client. Software is inherently flexible and can change. As requirements change through changing business circumstances, the software that supports the business must also evolve and change. That means as the businesses keep on evolving, so we have to accommodate changes in the software as a company. So that is very much essential, and that process is called as software evolution. Although there has been a demarcation between development and evolution, that is maintenance, this is increasingly irrelevant as fewer and fewer systems are completely new. See, when the software evolution happens, you cannot replace one software with another software. That very rarely occurs. Say, for example, you have delivered one software system to your client. Say, for example, you have used PHP. Now, his business has evolved and he has come up with new requirements. Suppose, let us assume, using PHP as a language, if that functionality cannot be implemented, okay, that can be the reason from migrating the application development from PHP to some other language like Python or Java. So under those circumstances, you may have to redesign the complete software system using new other language plus include new functionality. So that is a very rare case that happens. That's why business applications, okay, they will select languages like .NET, Python, Java. Like these are the languages which are very much robust, okay, and that can implement any requirement. Any modern business requirement can be implemented with greater ease by using these languages. Then system evolution process. So the first step of system evolution is define system requirements, then assess existing systems. Okay, so just you see once how the existing system is defined, then propose system changes, then you see what changes need to be done for the existing system so that we can add new functionality, then accordingly modify the system. Okay, then it becomes completely the new system. Then assess existing system. Okay, so whether it is working satisfactory or not. So for this assessing existing system, so there will be documentation available. So how you have implemented the system, what are the modules, what are the features. So by looking that, you can assess the existing system. Okay, that is what this rectangular block tells us. See, always the processors are denoted by using like these symbols. That is a vowel, and the outcomes are indicated by using the rectangular blocks. Rectangular blocks are nothing but the input or output. So here it is the input and here it is the output. Then coping with the change. Change is inevitable in all larger software projects. So because we know that businesses will keep emerging. Just if we take the example of Flipkart portal or any e-commerce portal like Amazon. So very frequently you can see the changes in its GUI and changes in the offers that they give. Okay, that means we need to assume that. Okay, so most of the times they may change once in a week, and even faster than a week they may be doing some changes. So that means we need to understand so how much fast they need to cope up with the change. isn't it? Then change leads to rework. So the costs of changing include both rework as well as the costs of implementing the new functionality. So when I say change, so we need to include, just if we do a little bit modification of to the existing code, that is good enough, or we may have to write the completely new code and add it to the existing system. So what kind of rework we need to do, depending upon that, the cost will also vary. Okay, cost will vary. Always it will cost more money to do the rework than the fresh work. Then reducing the costs of rework. How to reduce the cost of rework? Change anticipation, where the software process includes activities that can anticipate possible changes before significant rework is required. For example, a prototype system may be developed to show some key features of the system to customers. See, before developing any system, most of the times, especially in case of business related applications and critical applications, something called as software prototype will be developed. So it will just show them. So the system will look like this, and you can access the features like this. So is it good enough for you? If the customer tells, okay, yes, this kind of implementation is okay for me, then further they'll start developing that piece of code, isn't it? So always see, just like how a civil engineer will show the blueprint of the house before constructing it. So once you give approval for the blueprint, then only you will start constructing the house. So here also similar way we can use prototyping concept, so that will greatly reduce the rework. Change tolerance, where the process is designed so that the changes can be accommodated at relatively low cost. So change tolerance is one aspect where when the software system is flexible enough so that you can add new functions very easily, so that it will also reduce software cost. Then system prototyping, where a version of the system or part of the system is developed quickly to check the customer's requirements and the feasibility of the design decisions. This approach supports change anticipation. So system prototyping may be done. Say, for example, you can tweak the existing design and you can do a little bit changes, and you can show that design to the client. So if he says, yes, this design is okay, then further that can be implemented quickly to meet the requirements of the client. Then incremental delivery. So where the system increments are delivered to the customers for comment and experimentation. This supports both change avoidance and change tolerance. So incremental delivery means like you prioritize the requirements which are to be implemented first, okay, then which can be implemented later. So that is called incremental delivery. Say for example, so within first 6 months what to be implemented, after 6 months what to be implemented. So what to be implemented after 6 months, that will get least priority. Then what to be implemented during the first 6 months, so that will get higher priority. So that is how incremental software delivery takes place. And this supports both change avoidance and change tolerance. The change avoidance means you have very clearly given the priority, so we have the clarity what is to be implemented. Then change tolerance means, so you have to tolerate for 6 months, because to whichever the requirements you have given least priority, that will be implemented in the second version of the software. That is change tolerance. Okay, that's it with coping with change requirements. So as per textbook, we have completed 2 chapters, but in terms of syllabus coverage, not even single module is finished. So we have to start chapter 3, which is also part of module 1. Look at your students, if we study 3 chapters, that becomes 1 module. Syllabus is vast. So the 3rd chapter is Agile Software Development. So in this chapter, these are the topics covered, that is agile methods, agile development techniques, agile project management, and scaling agile methods. So before going to that, we need to understand what is rapid software development. Rapid software development is a technique wherein you are not going to develop everything starting from the scratch. That means we will see what are the, say for example, if you get a requirement to develop one software project, in that we need to identify what are, for which of the components the code is already available. So that code we will reuse. So reusing the code is one aspect, and another aspect is to use some of the IDEs wherein you can just by dragging and dropping you can develop the GUIs so that the code will be generated automatically. So such IDEs we need to use so that we can do the rapid software development. So that's the concept of rapid software development. Rapid development and delivery is now often the most important requirement for software systems. Business operate in a fast changing requirement, and it is practically impossible to produce a set of stable software requirements. So there is nothing like stable software requirements. If you have stable software requirements, then you can go for waterfall model because there the requirements are stable, not at all changing. So that is the rare case happens with the business. Then software has to evolve quickly to reflect changing business needs. So that is the reason why we need rapid software development. We need rapid software development because the software has to evolve very quickly so that it can reflect changing business needs. Plan-driven development is essential for some types of system, but doesn't meet these business needs. So plan-driven is not at all suitable for business-related applications. Then agile development methods emerged in the late 1980s. That means somewhere around 96, 97. So people started using agile methodology, whose aim was to radically reduce the delivery time for working software systems. So the main agenda or the objective behind using agile methods is to reduce the delivery time and to reduce the importance given for documentation. Okay. Now let us see how it happens. What is agile development? Program specification, design and implementation are interleaved. So these are the interleaved activities. The system is developed as a series of versions or increments with stakeholders involved in version specification and evolution. So the software is developed in terms of iterations with stakeholders involved in version specification and evaluation. So now here, first of all, we need to understand the meaning of stakeholders. Can anyone tell me what are okay? What's the meaning of stakeholders here? Students?
They have like shares of the company. They have share of the company.
Shareholders of the company. Huh? Not like that, man. Not like that. Okay. So stakeholders means not like that. Say for example, say I am the software company and you are the client. So you are giving business to me. So if I develop the software, you will be benefited from that. So you are the customer, and if you give the project, I will get benefit. I'll generate revenue. So I am the stakeholder. So you are the stakeholder. I am the stakeholder. Then see, ultimately your software will be used by your clients. So they are also the stakeholders. That means end users are the stakeholders. Then within my company, there are so many employees. Say there are so if I take up this project, there will be various teams like testing team, design team, specification team, quality assurance team, and so on. So project team members are also the stakeholders. Okay, project team members are stakeholders. As a company, I am the stakeholder. As a client, you are the stakeholders, and end users are also the stakeholders. And if this software is having any impact on the society is also the stakeholder. Okay, now we got what is the meaning of stakeholder. The people who will be impacted either directly or indirectly with just because of this project, they are all becoming stakeholders. Got the point? What's the meaning of stakeholders? Hello? Hello? Yeah. Frequent
Yes,
delivery
sir.
of new versions for evolution. So when the system has to evolve, obviously you have to release newer versions of the software to claim that yes, system is evolving. Then extensive tool support. See, I told the main objective behind agile method is to reduce the development time and to deliver the software very frequently and to reduce the documentation time. So to do all these things, obviously you'll be using so many automation tools, and you will be building something called as the automation pipeline. So automation pipeline is a concept or a process which will tell like how to link so many phases of software development so that some of the activities can be automated, which can be done without any user intervention, just by executing the scripts, so that it will greatly reduce the overall project time or the overall project duration, thus saving a lot of money. Then minimal documentation. So more emphasis is on working code rather than documentation. That means whenever we go for agile methods, the amount of documentation will be minimal, very minimal documentation. Why very minimal documentation means? Because in see, the software will be delivered in terms of versions. See, in each of the version, the software SRS documentation is changing, it is getting changed, it is not a static requirement. So that's why minimal documentation for these projects. Then why more emphasis on working code? Just because, see, for any given time, we will be telling just what to do in this iteration. Say, for example, we are starting with the first version. Just we will tell them, so this is the software we are going to develop, and these are the functionalities. So which we are going to develop in this first version, and you have to develop the software in such a way that later modifications can be accommodated. So that means in each version they'll be having clarity about what they are doing. Then look at this diagram. This diagram depicts the difference between plan driven and agile development. So when it is plan driven, so requirements engineering. So requirements engineering, there is a back loop, which means plan based development. See, once the requirements are documented, once again, if customer is coming with a few more requirements, so you have to do rework on document. So requirements engineering, so you have to accommodate changes. Then after doing the changes, once again you prepare the requirement specification document. Then so already some design was there, so design and implementation was there. Now you change the design. So you can see the back loop here. This is called as a back loop. So you change the design, then accordingly change the implementation, that is the code. So this is how plan based development works. So once again, requirement change request. So after implementation, once again the client comes with requirement, once again you do the changes. So there are 3 steps. So here, whereas in agile development, so first take the requirements engineering. So while taking the requirements itself, you'll be having very high clarity about. So say he may tell 10 requirements, but you'll be telling him very clearly that only 5 requirements will be. So you are telling, so I'm giving more priority for 5 requirements. Only those 5 requirements will be developed as the version 1. Okay. So only those things will be developed in the first iteration, and that will be developed. So now you do design and implementation only for the 5 requirements. Okay. Then once again you take up the requirements which have been given least priority. Okay, then you add few more requirements, then do the change for requirements and implementation. Okay, see here, this requirement specification, this is the complete documentation. So this is avoided. So this is been avoided. So whereas requirements engineering, so some abstract, so they go with minimal documentation and design and development. So whatever I told, the same thing here. So now let us see agile methods. So let us see first the history of agile methods. See, during 1980s and 1990s, people were not happy with the plan-based methods. Why? Because so earlier people used to assume that so the client should come at once and he should give all the requirements so that we can document the requirements. We can prepare a comprehensive document. Then based upon that, we do design, then development, coding, testing, everything like that. But slowly, so many businesses started using computers and they started having their own applications. So therefore, so somewhere people felt that so to run the businesses, the static requirements will not suffice. So when the requirements become static, such applications cannot serve the purpose of the business. So we need something different. So that is where in the late 90s, people started with agile methods. So focus on the code rather than the design. And agile methods are based on iterative approach of software development. That means, so to evolve the system, they started developing system in terms of iterations by making it the flexible system, to making entire software as a flexible system. And they are intended to deliver working software quickly and evolve this quickly to meet changing requirements. So that there is something called as CASE tools, that is computer aided software engineering. There is a concept called as CASE, that is computer aided software engineering. So as per that, there are certain tools, we call them as CASE tools. So examples for CASE tools includes say for example Macromedia Dreamweaver. It's an IDE, isn't it? You can drag and drop some of the components and you can create the GUI and the code will be generated automatically. So that is one example for CASE tool. Then you have Rational Rows. So using the Rational Rows, you can design, you can drag and drop and you can design the system design. You can draw use case diagram, class diagram, sequence diagram, deployment diagram, and so on. And there is something called as reverse engineering. That means, say you build the class diagram and you establish relations between the various classes. And if you do reverse engineering, automatically the source code will be generated. Okay, so using the Rational Rows, you're drawing the diagrams and you're generating the source code. So that is also possible. So that means that is greatly reducing the developer's time. Then you need to within that means it will only design all the classes, the names of the variables and names of the methods, everything, and the logic will be blank. So just you need to type the logic inside each of the functions. So that will greatly reduce the developer's time. So these are all some of the examples of CASE tools. So if you use CASE tools, you can develop the applications very quickly. So you can use CASE tools for project management. You can use CASE tools for developing the GUIs, and you can use it for automating some of the testing procedures. And you can to prepare the test documentation, that is the report, what we say test report, you can use CASE tools. So in each and every phase you can use CASE tools so that the software can be delivered very quickly, and parallelly you can save a lot of money. So with Agile Manifesto, we are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others to do it. Through this work, we have come to value individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So this is very important. So giving more importance to individuals, that means project team members and interaction between them over processes and tools working software. Tools working software over comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation, then responding to change over following a plan. That means, see, you may be hearing, so people say that, say there is a Scrum meeting. See, Scrum is a methodology to manage the overall growth of the project. So every day, see, in case of Agile methods, say for example, if they are using any methodology, so they will do Scrum meeting. As part of Scrum meeting, every day they will give them the target. So this is what you are supposed to do today. So before that, they'll ask, So what was your yesterday work, whether it is completely done, whether you or anything is pending. So today you finish that. After finishing this much is today's target. Similarly, they will be having weekly targets. So every day they will be having 2 meetings. So one meeting in the beginning of the day and another meeting just before winding the day. So that means they are giving more importance to individuals and their interactions rather than documentation. Say when they have more clarity about what they are supposed to do, why you need more diagrams, why you need in detail software design. So that is not required. So that's why they are giving more importance to individuals and interactions and avoiding a lot of documentation work. See, system design is a documentation work. SRS is a documentation work. So they are avoiding such things. So just with the help of abstract diagrams, so abstract system design, so they can design the software. That is while there is value in the items on the right. So that means when there is the value in the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. That means when you value the individuals within the project team, obviously they will deliver the very high quality software. So that's the moral of this Agile manifesto. If you value your project team members, so then obviously you will come up with very good quality software product. Students, will end up here. Tomorrow we'll start with principles of Agile methods. Stop recording. Answer for